Hi, I'm Jenny Miller of Let's Get Sewing. Are you ready to take the fear and frustration out of your sewing experience and finally get to work? Then you are in the right place. Be sure to click subscribe so that you don't miss any of my tips and tutorials to help take your sewing journey to the next level. And now, let's get sewing. Today's video is part 2 of a 2-part series that I've done on double needles. After creating the first video, I realized there were a few details I left out and one technique that I wanted to add, and so I've just made a part 2. I'll put the link to part 1 in the description. First of all, due to some of the questions I got on the first video, I realized that I didn't include a lot of detail about how to thread the machine for a double needle, which is really quite simple, but I'm going to include a demonstration of that in this video. I had also intended to put a section about pin tucks because you can create pin tucks with your double needle. And that's what I've done on this dress here. I got the bodice done and tried it on and didn't really like how plain the front looked. It needed just a little detail. And so I added 6 pin tucks on either side that I created with my double needle. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. It's super simple. And once you see it, I think you're going to want to use it in your projects too. So let's take a look at how to use our double needle. My machine has the 2 spools of thread right here. Some of them may have like 2 pins sticking up here on this side of the machine, or some of them have a removable pin, and so you have to find it and put it in a little hole for the second spool, depending on your machine kind. But my 2 are right here. And so I'm going to put one on the bottom here. And then put the other one on the top pin. And I have my 2 threads here, one for each needle. Now I'm just going to thread my machine as normal, threading them one at a time, but through the same channel. So first I'm going to do this top spool here, and I'm just going to thread it through my machine, through the tension disc. And my machine has 2 of these little thread guides here, so it's kind of meant to do a double needle, which makes it kind of nice. But now, if it doesn't, you can put them both through the same hook. Now I'm going to pull out the other spool, and I am going to go through and thread it exactly the same and put that one into that hook. So now I have my 2 threads coming out here, and I have my 2 needles. Unfortunately, you can't use your needle threader with a double needle, so I have just threaded this manually through my 2 needles. You can use whatever method works best for you. Once you have your 2 needles threaded and your bobbin in place, just like with any machine, you'll draw up your bobbin from the bottom or cut it off, however your machine works. I always like to have my bobbin thread drawn up through so that I can hold the threads when I first start sewing. You want to lower the tension on your upper threads, and there's a little bit of an explanation why in the first video, but I like to turn mine to basically a buttonhole setting because then I know that those top threads will get pulled to the bottom and I won't get a bump in my seam. For the pin tucks, I'm going to switch to this pin tuck foot, and you can see that it has these ridged channels in the bottom for the pin tucks to ride along as we make them. So I'm going to put that one on my machine. I have my pin tuck foot on my machine, and I just have a scrap today. Typically you would have some kind of line or markings where you would put your pin tucks. So I am just going to go ahead and stitch my line of double stitching with my needle. And you can see this is so much of a scrap that it's got a little slit in it here, but that's okay. Now, once I have stitched my row of double stitching into my fabric, you can see that it's already started here to pull a bump up here. And that's because I probably have my top tension a little tight. I know that because I can really see the zigzag here on the bottom, but that's not a problem right now because we're trying to create pin tucks, which are raised. So to accentuate that, I'm going to turn this over to the back and take a hold of the two bobbin threads at either end of my row of stitching. And I'm going to pull those up tight. And so now it has really cinched up the back here. You can't see any zigzagging of the bobbin thread anymore, and it's really pulled this top up into a nice mound for the pin tuck. So now I can sew my next row of pin tucks. Now remember there are ridges in the bottom here, so I'm going to go over two. There's the center ridge, the next one over. I'm going to go two to the side here and put the ridge of this pin tuck into the channel in the presser foot. That will help me keep my pin tucks parallel. And now I'm just going to stitch the next row, keeping that pin tuck inside the channel of the foot. And now I have my second row. I can see that I have zigzags on the back of my fabric. So I'm just going to lay that down and take a hold of my bobbin threads again and pull them up. And I wish you could feel it here. You can feel as it pulls up, it creates another ridge. And so now I have parallel pin tucks. And so you could keep doing that all the way across here as far as you need to, depending on your design. I hope you found this information helpful. Again, it goes along with part one, so make sure that you've seen part one. Check for the link in the description. Between the two of them, I think you'll have a really good picture of what a double needle is, how to use it, and what kind of fun things you can do with it. So now, let's get those double needles put to work and let's get sewing.